When you were younger, you probably would have heard your parents nagging at you to eat your carrots or you're going to go blind and not be able to see in the dark, which is a very, very good method of motivation to help their kids to eat carrots, because who doesn't want to be able to see in the dark? Who actually wants to go blind because they're not eating enough carrots? The kids are very easily influenced, and so these sort of random things that parents have got off Facebook or something to try to get their kids to actually eat a lot of vegetables. You would have heard these things before, surely, when you were a kid. But I'm here today to tell you if carrots and vitamin A or beta carotene, which is the chemical that is inside of carrots, which is also the thing that makes them orange, is actually useful to help you not only see in the dark, but see in general altogether. Now, beta carotene is a pretty long molecule, and as I say, it is the thing that makes carrots orange. It is an orange pigment, and it's got a lot of carbon-carbon double bonds, a lot of trans carbon-carbon double bonds, and it's sort of a symmetrical molecule in a way. And when you ingest beta carotene, once it goes into the small intestines and stuff, because it's retinol, which is the first point that vitamin A is sort of turned into from beta carotene, retinol is essentially half of beta carotene without the OH. So beta carotene is going to be split in half, and then it's going to have OH groups added onto the end to form retinol, which is one of the forms of vitamin A. And then retinol is stored in the liver for later use. Retinol is a fat-soluble vitamin, and that is very, very useful because it means that it doesn't have to sort of go in the body and then it's going to come out in the urine and then you don't get all the benefits. It's something that if you had a lot of carrots one day, a lot of vitamin A and beta carotene, you could store that in the liver for it to be used at a later date when it's actually needed, because you're not going to need an excess amount of retinol every day. It's not like once you have a humongous amount of carrots that's actually kind of a waste. It's actually very useful because it can be stored because it is a fat-soluble vitamin, and that is due to the fact that it doesn't contain many oxygens and therefore can't form many hydrogen bonds with water. It's got loads of carbons and hydrogens double bond, but it only has one OH group, and that means that it is generally going to be insoluble in water. You think of something such as butanol, even that is pretty insoluble in water, and that only contains 4 carbons compared to 1 oxygen. If you think about the ratio of retinol, it is a lot larger, so that actually makes a lot of sense scientifically. Now, when retinol is needed, it's going to be taken and carried to the retina. It is converted into one of its active forms, 11-cis-retinol, and this is done by the enzyme isomeriohydrolase. Now, 11-cis-retinol, this is where I'm pretty sure it has a cis carbon-carbon double bond instead of a trans one. You'll notice when a trans double bond exists on a molecule, the molecule continues to sort of go straight despite the sort of zigzags in the general carbon structure due to the bond angles. But when there is a cis carbon-carbon double bond, because the chains sort of exist from the double bond off the carbons that are part of the double bond, they leave the carbons and bond to the carbons on the same side. Because in a double bond, these molecules are not able to just twist and be interchangeable, because otherwise the bond would break. It sort of changes the shape, and even though it is the exact same molecule, this is something known as easy isomerism, and I always get the two confused. I'm not exactly sure if cis is Z or E, or trans is Z or E, but trans and cis is the ones that I've seen a lot before, because when I'm sort of looking at biological molecules, cis and trans are more commonly used, because when in chemistry it can get a lot more complicated than that. You can have a lot more substituents, and then there's priorities and stuff. So E to Z works in chemistry, but for the purposes of biology, cis and trans seems to work perfectly fine. Now, once you have 11-cis-retinol, you're then going to convert it into 11-cis-retanal, which converts the OH group to an aldehyde group by getting rid of 2 hydrogens, and henceforth, the enzyme that converts this molecule into 11-cis-retanal is retinal dehydrogenase. Now, 11-cis-retanal is added to something known as an opsin protein, and this complex forms something known as rhodopsin, which is commonly found inside of the eye, inside of the retina. That is the thing that when light sort of comes through into your eye and it is absorbed by the retina, rhodopsin is one of these light-absorbing chemicals, and it is specifically 11-cis-retanal that is what is changed when light is absorbed. When the sort of UV rays go into the eye, 11-cis-retanal converts to straight-up retanal, and this changing in the shape of retinal, and therefore the whole entire rhodopsin protein, is sort of the thing that triggers some of the chemical signaling and chemical reactions, which actually mean that when light is absorbed into the eye, it can actually sort of be detected by the optic nerve, and then the brain flips the image around, because when it goes into the eye, it's upside down for some reason. I never really understood the physics of that or whatever, but that just seems to be how it works on a factual basis. But rhodopsin and retinal is part of that chemical signaling process, and it is the first major step. And some of the steps that follow this conversion are transducin, which is another protein. Maybe it's an enzyme. I'm not quite sure on what category that molecule is. Then activates an enzyme, which I know is an enzyme, known as phosphodiesterase. This enzyme hydrolyzes cyclic guanine monophosphate, and cyclic guanine monophosphate, when it is hydrolyzed, it closes ion channels. Now, when an ion channel is closed, if you imagine there were a lot of people in a room, right, and they're all sort of rushing through, and it's like a continuous sort of thing. Loads of people are entering this room from a lot of rooms sort of before, and they're all going out of many small, tiny little doors into the next room. What hydrolyzed cyclic guanine monophosphate actually does is it closes all these doors. It closes all of these ion channels that mean the ions are able to like move around and like cause charge and stuff. And this causes the ions to build up in a certain part, like the people would in this room. What this sort of build up of ions does is it causes charge to exist, because there is so much positive charge, maybe there's some negative charge on the other side, and it causes this polarization. What this polarization actually does is it causes the optic nerve to carry this charge to the brain, and that is what flips the image around, and then you're actually able to see sort of upright consistently on a day-by-day basis. It is this polarization that causes this electrical field to exist that I can't think of the word. It sort of activates the optic nerve to like signal to the brain that we are seeing, which is a very, very interesting process. It's so chemically complicated, biologically complicated in so many different ways. It's so fragile. It works absolutely perfectly. It's obscene how complex the human anatomy is, and how we sort of just take it for granted. We just sort of, our body's working and it's working fine and that's all okay, but it's like one small tiny problem where there's like an enzyme deficiency in your genetics or something can cause so many biological processes to just not exist and not function properly, but your body still finds alternatives. It is also very hard to be deficient in vitamin A, because as I say, it is a fat soluble vitamin and can be stored. Retinol and retinal or whatever is something that is needed consistently, because you are seeing every second of every day. There's no stopping seeing. Even when your eyes are closed, I guess your eyes are still sort of functioning, but maybe it's sort of less like inducive. When you're looking at the sun, there's going to be more retinol needed than when you're just closing your eyes or whatever. But it's hard to be deficient because it can be stored in the liver, because it's fat soluble. Otherwise, that's also another reason why the body just seems to work perfectly, because if it wasn't fat soluble, it would be very hard to sort of upkeep this intake and upkeep the amount that you needed on a day-by-day basis. But other than being really, really good and useful for the way your eye functions, is it has so many other benefits, such as skin health, reproduction, immune system, respiratory health, red blood cell formation, heart health, brain health, and yeah, that's all I've got in the list that I have here. But there are so many more. Vitamins are so involved in all of the stuff that happens in our body, but the fact that it basically contributes to how our eyes work, it is part of the biological mechanism. It's not just like a helping hand or whatever. It is the biological mechanism. That's why it is said to be its main function, and that is why your parents want you to eat carrots. But with that, I recommend subscribing and eat your carrots and have a good day.